Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Life Design Plus, where we are mastering the art of living your authentic life. And I want to welcome you to this episode with my friend Matt Gerlach. Now, Matt and I met in an unconventional way for the podcast. Usually, the people that I have on the podcast I already know or I've been following, but Matt and I met through basically a networking group. And the first time we talked, I knew I had to have him on the podcast to bring his story to you, to inspire and to motivate some of you that are out there. Now, as you're going to hear, Matt left a very safe, comfortable, successful, seven-figure job for the unknown, because that job was not fulfilling him. It didn't allow him to be his authentic self. And through the process and through working through some trauma and overcoming some damage he had inside that he is very kind and very vulnerable and shares with us, he was able to figure out what his authentic path is and what he's supposed to be doing, which is ultimately helping other people navigate the traumas similar to he had to find their authentic life. Now, he doesn't call it their authentic life, but I'm using that term, but that's basically what he's doing. So this is a great conversation of somebody who is on the pursuit of their authentic life, finds that life, and then realizes it's only to help other people in a way that Matt is uniquely prepared to be able to do. So as always, I want to thank you for tuning in. I also want to ask you to do me a favor. Please, as you're listening, if you hear something that resonates with you, drop it in the comments. Let Matt know what part of his story resonated with you or what he inspired you to try and go pursue. He came on, gave up an hour of his time in hopes of trying to inspire and motivate some of you out there. So if you could, let him know that his story was heard and appreciated. All right. Appreciate you all doing that. Thanks for tuning in, and let's enjoy this great episode with my friend Matt. Matt, why don't you kind of give us a little high level of kind of where you were, that while you had success, I think you said you were outwardly successful. When you had this outwardly success, but internally it wasn't there, what were you doing at that time? And then we'll kind of go into how you began to realize that maybe there was something more for you.
So about 8 years ago, I was living in New York City with my partner, David, and we had been together for about 4 years. It was my first real, serious relationship that was going very well. And there was like, I needed to get to know myself better. I didn't know this at the time, but there was something going on inside me where I wasn't acquainted with myself enough. I didn't love myself enough to really be in relationship with somebody else as our relationship was maturing. So that was kind of happening on the sidelines. And it randomly fell into this baby product industry, selling baby products. It's a normal, nice industry, but it's a little peculiar, a little random that I fell into this. Before that, I sold metal. I've kind of just been going with where the wind has taken me throughout my career. And I was laid off of a job, and it wasn't particularly traumatizing because I'd always made money, and I think when you speak to the outward success, I'd always been making better money than most people had. And I thought that was enough. And I got laid off, and I knew that I really didn't want to work for somebody else again. So I started a consulting business. And I kind of call myself an accidental entrepreneur almost. Looking back, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. The science couldn't have been more clear. But I kind of just did this. It was a path of least resistance for me. And I had always been a top performer at work. I had been in sales my entire career. I never really had to fight huge fights. I always had a nice boss ahead of me that would kind of take care of me. I was a nice person always. And I started this business, and I had no idea what I'd gotten myself into. You have to set boundaries. You have to engage in conflict. You have, and I didn't know that people could have conflict and not have it be detrimental to a relationship. That's kind of what I grew up with. Conflict was bad, and there was never kind and compassionate conflict. And when you start your business, you need to say no to the wrong customers, to the wrong clients. You need to just not go after everything. And I didn't know how to do any of this. So I started crippling, and I started having, I guess looking back on it, I felt depressed. I remember that. I went to the doctor. She started me on Lexapro. When you start medications like this, it oftentimes isn't the right one, and it's trial and error, and you often get way worse before you get better. But sometimes you stay on it long enough and it starts working. So there's that going on. I felt horrible on this medication. And I also knew that I needed to stay on it for a little bit of time to make sure it was working. My doctor had agreed that it wasn't working. But this was all happening while I'm trying to run a
Mhm.
business. And I remember living in Manhattan, just like walking around the park, smoking cigarette after cigarette after cigarette after cigarette, and then I was going to the doctor frequently. She figured out that I had high blood pressure. No surprise there. I wasn't really taking care of myself all that well, and I was super stressed out. I freaked out about this blood pressure thing. I thought I was dying from it, even though she told me that it wasn't
Mhm.
that bad. And then my partner and I, we lived in New York for about 7 years. We had talked about moving to LA. It became time to move to LA, and I literally didn't know mental health
Mhm.
was a thing. I didn't know that stress was a thing. I didn't know that people needed sleep or they might end up
Mhm.
crippling the way I was. Our first night in LA, we landed at LAX at like 2 o'clock, went to our apartment, started unpacking, and then I started to feel dizzy, checked my blood pressure. It was 190 over 110, and called the doctor. They said, "You need to go to the hospital." I had chest pain and went to the hospital. And they kept me overnight at the hospital, thinking that it wasn't out of the question that I was having a
Mhm.
heart attack. And that was really the beginning of this journey. Um, I got out of the hospital, had to follow up with several different doctors, cardiologist, of course, therapist, of course, general practitioner. I'm a head and neck surgeon. I had breathing issues, which looking back were
Mhm.
anxiety,
Mhm.
and an addiction specialist. I was drinking too much at the time, and I was very vulnerable through all of this. I wanted to
Mhm.
get better. And then I was going through the motions and I started having panic attacks while driving. So that was really like the catalyst of when I had to do something. I mean, I had to really, really, really figure this out because I
Mhm.
couldn't drive. Meanwhile, I'm running a business, flying literally all over
Mhm.
the world. And yeah, I mean, this sent me down a path to finally. I was seeing doctor after doctor, consistently following. I was in the cardiologist's office all the time, concerned about my blood pressure in LA. And finally, I landed in a neurologist's office who took one look at me and he was like, it's just kind of funny. He was like the
Mhm.
meanest guy ever. He was like probably 70 years old, had been around the block several times, and he took one look and he's like, "Don't ever come back here again. This is anxiety. Like, I can't help
Mhm.
you, like." And then I mean, on one hand, it was so freeing that I learned I wasn't
Mhm.
dying because no one could really figure out what the panic
Mhm.
attacks were coming from. And I mean, who knows what I was saying? Like, I mean, this has really hit me. I've been in therapy for 20 years, and I can't tell you what we talked about the first, 13 or
Mhm.
14 of those. But, and so yeah, so once I learned it was anxiety, I was in a couple different kinds of therapy. I was in yoga teacher training with a highly philosophical
Mhm.
yoga teacher who was amazing and just really started opening up and learned that what I was suffering from was anxiety. There was childhood trauma that happened. Lots of different things happened in my childhood. I was a man. I wasn't supposed, or I am a man. I was a man
Mhm.
then too, and always been raised that men aren't really supposed to
Mhm.
hurt. We're not supposed to have any sort of emotional problems. And so I spent the following 6 or so years unpacking this
Mhm.
all. My partner and I were in couples therapy and learned that this was probably one of the biggest breakthroughs that she was like, "Tell David what you need." And I was like, "I can't." And I started crying and like, everyone's like, "Oh, like, so this is
Mhm.
what's going on. Like, you don't think your needs are valid. You don't like your
Mhm.
needs." And that was really the huge catalyst to really uncovering like the childhood trauma. Like, growing up, I had a lot of needs. I've always been a super sensitive person. I was gay, young, and never fit in anywhere. I hated sports so much. I still hate sports, and made me just like I was just so
Mhm.
different, and I acted out. I was punished for it at home. There was no like compassion, like, hey, this kid might be going through something, and I just learned that my needs were wrong, and I was wrong for
Mhm.
having them.
Before we go down to any of it, I just want to say thank you for like that vulnerability because you just shared a lot with someone you've only met a couple times and with an audience that you don't know. But I appreciate that because as you know this, you're not the only one who has had childhood traumas and things to work out. But to your point, until you went through all of this, you didn't know. And hopefully somebody listening or watching hears this and begins to make that connection, and they're able to figure out that, hey, it's some internal trauma that's hurting me right now. And they figure it out earlier because you were willing to share all of that. So just thank you for sharing all of that. And I'm sure we're going to go deeper in a little bit. So thank you in advance for wherever we go as we continue on. Um, I was gonna ask about starting the business, but I feel like now that's so like light work, and we should just skip over that. Like, there's plenty of people who have started businesses that people can get advice from. But I want to like go back in as you were sorting through all of this stuff. Was there anything in particular that worked for you? Because I'm in the belief that everybody's going to have their own prescription to figuring things out,
Yeah.
their own way to align their lives the way they need to. But the more we hear from others about what worked for them, it may give us some ideas of what to hone in on. So I know you mentioned working with the therapist, the doctors, getting into yoga, but was there one thing that you did and you still do that's been really, really impactful to you, kind of staying grounded, and now that you've found this alignment and found who you are, and it appears to be you're happy with who you are, is there something that keeps you there?
Yeah, I think it all kind of falls under like the pyramid or the umbrella of, I want to say, vulnerability. And like to what you just mentioned, thank you so much for the nice words. And it's like this is it, I mean, it's it's being honest with ourselves. And I know that's a very tall order, I mean, and I don't really think that it's that possible for most people without some sort of
Hmm.
help. And help, you might be fortunate and it comes by way of reading or by way of, something more accessible, or it might come in by way of being in community or talk therapy or something. But I would say that the most helpful things for me, it kind of boils down to, I would say that like it's getting out of your
Hmm.
head. And I'm really careful about like, I don't want to, like so many people say like, I can't meditate. I challenge that a tiny bit, but at the same hand, I way totally
Hmm.
respect it. So I would hate to sit here and say you must meditate to feel
Hmm.
enlightened. I mean, I think a lot of people feel that that's not possible for them, and I hear you. But I do think that you need to find a way to learn to listen to
Hmm.
yourself, to learn to uncover what is inside of you, to learn to be honest with yourself about what really is hurting inside of you. And I think as men in particular, we are like, I think almost every man out there of our generation has been conditioned in one way or a very even extreme way that we're not supposed to have the feelings
Hmm.
we do, that it's
Hmm.
unmanly. I mean, I think I don't have facts on this exactly, but I think like almost like leadership, management, structure up until quite recently has been like, don't show your
Hmm.
fear, show you're brave and don't let your people below you see that you're worried, and lead with lead with like strength. And like, I think it takes more strength to be honest about our fear and about what
Hmm.
worries us. And um, it's all about like getting what's inside of you
Hmm.
out of you. Meditating helps, honestly. Like my partner and I meditate every morning, and I always ask him like, "How did it go?" He's like, "Oh, my mind was busy." Honestly, my mind is busy
Hmm.
98% of every moment I spend meditating. The 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 call is to not
Hmm.
judge that and to just observe it. And once in a great while, I'll get a little bit of clarity. But I think journaling is probably the best bang for my buck I've ever
Hmm.
had. It's so flexible. I used to think that somebody would read it. Now I couldn't care less. And if somebody reads it, they are the worst person in the world to violate that privacy. And when I die, have at it. I
Hmm.
don't care. But and I think like that journaling could also be like, talk to the bathroom mirror. You could write something down and burn it, but it is the act of getting it out of you. And I've seen this. This has been the change for me. That even, I mean, you compliment my vulnerability. I don't know how else to
Hmm.
do this other than to be like, when we keep things inside, it eats us
Hmm.
alive. I'm also an advocate. I mean, I have skeletons that I'm not sharing with every single person. And I think that's been a balance of learning that like there's certain things that are not meant to be shared
Hmm.
with the world, or some things I'll share with him and not with her or whatever. But it's getting it out of you. And the thing about getting it out of you is it's getting it out of you so you can you can like understand what's
Hmm.
inside of you But also, like, the more you talk about things, the more that you get it out of you and share it, the more you realize nothing's wrong with you. Everyone's crazy. Everybody has crazy thoughts. Everybody's
Hmm.
afraid. Everybody's nervous. Like our world right now, like our political craziness, our economic stuff, we're all worried about it,
Hmm.
And the more that you realize that you aren't alone, the more you're able to embrace the the
Hmm.
hard feelings rather than try to push them away.
Did you ever discover that some of the things you're afraid of were just, things your imagination created? My barber told me that fear stands for false evidence appearing real. And I'd never heard that
Mhm.
before, and I loved it. And like some of the books I've read, like about, our minds and our thoughts, and that like our fears are all like created, and we end up kind of putting them on ourselves when the reality of it is those fears probably aren't going to happen to us. I don't know if you discovered that. I mean, there's some fears that are very real, like the fear of heights. Like, okay, but other fears we have that kind of keep us paralyzed are often manifestations of our own thoughts that aren't really out there. I don't know if you discovered that or not.
I say this like this is part of my like
Hmm.
slogan or whatever. Like I used to be afraid
Hmm.
of everything. Like I mean, I'm still on the spectrum of a little bit more afraid of things than other people are. Heights I don't like. But yeah, I mean, like this anxiety that I had around driving, these panic attacks
Hmm.
was fear of driving. Like at its root, I was afraid that and this was the vision I had in my mind, that I was going to pass out while driving. I would blow through a stoplight with nuns and children and old people in wheelchairs crossing the street. I'd kill them all. And listen, it's just the worst case
Hmm.
scenario,
Hmm.
And I think that I do think like I am still afraid of heights. My partner and I went to Australia and I did like the parasailing. I think behind the boat, probably the bravest thing I've
Hmm.
ever done in my life. But I did it and I could do it again if I had to. I wouldn't probably ever want to stand on the edge of the Grand
Hmm.
Canyon. That's probably pushing it for. I could even feel myself sweating a little bit right now. But I think that some fears need to be
Hmm.
challenged and some don't. Some you need to accept, and I think only you can
Hmm.
decide that. But right now, like, my partner and I talk about this, like our careers are in a point of like changing right now. And I think right now there's more headwind going on in our lives than there ever
Hmm.
has been. Like, I think that I would not be sleeping if this was Matt seven
Hmm.
years ago, and I'm fine. Like, you learn to trust yourself, and you learn that fear is the way to overcome fear, or one of the ways to overcome fear. I think this works for most fear, is you learn to believe that you will be
Hmm.
okay, that you can
Hmm.
navigate through it. And like even if you think of like losing someone close to you, like I used to be very afraid of that. Like and I remember the feeling like it was like I won't be able to survive the way I feel
Hmm.
from
Hmm.
that. And now I know that I will be able to survive that. I know that it would be very difficult, but you put one foot in front
Hmm.
of the other, and you've done it before. We've all done
Hmm.
it before. And the more you look at your past successes, your past accomplishments, the more you realize like you've been through a lot of hard things. You can handle a lot of hard things, and actually each hard thing you go through builds that muscle, so you're more equipped than you were
Hmm.
10 years ago to deal with hard
Hmm.
things.
I've got to imagine that the momentum that you and David have right now, it's probably because this is my belief. And this is what I'm trying to learn and formulate through these conversations and my writing and everything, is that you found alignment within yourself. And I think spirit, mind, body is a great way to do that. And you've mentioned body with yoga. You've mentioned meditation and journaling would be the mind. I'm sure there's some type of spirituality that goes on as well. So you're finding who you are. It sounds like you're moving closer to the authentic life that is Matt's authentic life today. And then that's when the winds come from behind you and just speed things up and move things to you a lot easier. So the cool thing is going to be to continue to watch your story and follow and see if these wins and this surrendering that you're kind of doing and allows you to just go where you're supposed to go and what success comes from it. Because if that continues the way I think it will, then that's just going to be another piece of evidence in my favor that there is truth to spirit, mind, and body in this authentic life. So I think that is probably one of, if not one of the main reasons that you have that momentum is you're where you're supposed to be. And then once you find that, the universe conspires to work with you, especially when you're looking to serve other people. So tell me about kind of like you went from being outwardly successful, internally a mess, to I think you're still probably outwardly successful, but you have the internal success to match that today. What does internal success look like or feel like to you?
I'm going to start with kind of addressing the
Mm-hmm.
spirituality piece because that's been like the biggest accomplishment for
Mm-hmm.
me this year, or like in my life. I mean, how do I want? I mean, I want to say this. So to answer your question, internal success is 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 loving
Mm-hmm.
yourself, is trusting yourself, is confidence, is the belief that all will work out how it's supposed to. It's peace is
Mm-hmm.
really what it is, I would say. And I got to go back to
Mm-hmm.
the spirituality
Please.
piece because like through yoga, we learned a lot about spirituality. I'm being really honest. I did forget a little bit about what I've learned in yoga, and I've been trying to think about it lately. Like, what exactly like about that was so resonant when I was in yoga teacher training 7 years ago. I have some. I can think it, but I can't quite
Mm-hmm.
verbalize it. But this year, actually, I was reading Jen Sincero's "You're a
Mm-hmm.
Badass" book on like this is what I started like the end of the year, and she said something in it, and it was something. This is kind of paraphrased, but it's like I've worked with hundreds, thousands of successful people, and there she said something like there is a limit to how far people can get without some sort of belief in
Mm-hmm.
spirituality. And that just hit me at the right time. That message might have come my way 1,000 times before, but this really, really, really
Mm-hmm.
stuck with me. And I've read a couple other things. It's come my way a lot. I've through the group that we're in together,
Mm-hmm.
brand builders. There's been some Christian people that I've come across that have really like opened my mind up to a higher
Mm-hmm.
power. And yeah, like it's changed
Mm-hmm.
everything. Honestly, I'm not sure if my God is a man in the sky. I'm not sure that it's not. I'm still kind of evaluating that. I'm also not really putting
Mm-hmm.
pressure on it right now, but like I do think I'm very confident about this, at least from what
Mm-hmm.
I've seen, that there becomes a point where you can't think your way out of something. You can't act your way out of something. You just need to, I mean, this is what
Mm-hmm.
peace is. You do your best and you also prioritize rest, you prioritize your health, you prioritize like you do your best and you go to bed and you trust that it's going to work out. And that's what internal success feels like. It's
Mm-hmm.
peace and knowing that you can't control everything. I think like growing up with, I mean, I know this for sure. This is like studied, but like when you grow up with trauma, like you somehow you become this person that feels that they need to control
Mm-hmm.
everything and that nothing will get done or that success won't happen, things won't get accomplished unless you are the one making it happen. And I don't believe that at all anymore. Like I believe in the concept of passive
Mm-hmm.
work. Like sometimes like, you hit your I'm sure you see this in your life. You hit your biggest strides after, a hike in the mountains without a cell phone or something, like without doing anything other than just laughing with
Mm-hmm.
your kids. And it's peace. It's just and it's knowing you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
okay. Like, right now I talk like I mean I worry about money more than I'd like to, probably a little more than the average person. Not more than everybody. I mean, other people do. I mean, I don't want to discount that, but like we live in LA. We have a nice house. We have an expensive house payment, and lately, like I like our house. I would like not. I would like to keep
Mm-hmm.
living in our house, but I've also gotten peace around the fact like it's to work out how it's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to, and you just have to trust that.
Well, and that's when you look back over your career and money has sounds like it's always worked out for you. And as a financial advisor, and now I consider myself more of a life planner now. It's tough to tell people that like when you have a plan and you are looking to serve and you're doing things the right way, that things tend to work themselves out, including money, especially when there is stress around money. But as I look back over my life, if I look back over the clients I've worked with, there's been trials and tribulations, and money has always worked itself out. And there is a bit of privilege, like for somebody who doesn't have enough money to get by, that's different. But for most people that have enough to get by, their money stressors are created stressors of their own. And if they would just kind of not worry and do things the right way, things just kind of magically work out. But to tell somebody, hey, don't stress over that, it'll magically work out, is kind of disingenuous, because that's not addressing the fear that they have. And actually, the fear that they have about that money is some other trauma that's hiding back in there, that's really not about the money. It's something else that they've experienced through their life that brings that to the money. The money is just how it's manifesting itself out in the world to them. I'm glad you explained it the way you did, because I am somebody who does not live in a world of absolutes, meaning I don't think there is one right way to practice your spirituality. I don't think there's one right way to practice your mindfulness. And I don't think there's one right way for you to take care of your body and your physical self. But I think that those things are important. And when I talk about this, I want spirituality to be open-ended. Whatever that means to you, I think that is what you need to do and will be right. But it's ultimately realizing that we are a smaller part of a much bigger thing. And if you think about, like, I forget who talks about it. I don't know if it's one of the spiritual people, and talks about how we're this little speck on this rock floating around in this big massive universe. Like, we're just so small in the grand scheme of things. And when you realize that, it kind of puts in perspective, like, we are important to ourselves and to our families, but it's really not. And that, I think that brings a little bit of perspective. And I think you get that with the spiritual connection. And I do believe that whatever your belief is, somewhere along the lines, you believe that something or someone created you. So you were created with a purpose, which is what I think brings us to finding our authentic life. And why were we created? Why was I given the gifts and talents that I was given? Why were you given the ones that you were? And how can we use that to make the world a better place? And if we all focused on that and we all found that, like, I almost think that we could live in a peaceful world, that if that was possible. And obviously there's circumstances and things way beyond that prevents that from happening. But, like, in theory, I think that that's it. So anyways, I'm glad that you made spirituality to where you're still figuring it out. You're not sure if it's the stereotypical white beard God that's sitting up there, which I don't think that's what it is either. And that's okay. It's just that you are connecting to something bigger than you that has a purpose for you, and that kind of guides you. And that, to me, is when we connect, when we think about, our intuition and following our heart and, doing our passions. To me, the reason we feel so good about those things is that's connected to that higher power that's kind of guiding us. So if you can listen to your heart, listen to your intuition, it's coming from a higher source that's trying to guide you to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, like, I love that, and for me, like, I would say that spirituality doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, I'm a novice, I would say, at this, but the thing that makes, and I think we're on the same page, and you got me thinking about this, but it's like, it really is faith, I would say. Faith that things will work out. I think that's that's the entry point for spirituality. For me, it was. And I would believe that, a lot of people could probably, who are struggling to figure out spirituality, what it means to them. I think a good starting place is to consider just faith, that, like, that things are going to work out. I do believe that, like, even if something horrific happens in my life, and I know that this is a tall order, I don't want to come off, insensitive. I'd like to think that I believe that I am in a place where I can accept something horrific happening, knowing that it had a purpose. And it doesn't make it easy by any means, but I think that there's a trust that everything does happen for a reason that I've gained. And I love what you said. It was, every, month or so, I'll get a visual. Like, I think I might have been brushing my teeth the other night and just, like, really zoomed out, realizing that I am that tiny speck on this planet that's spinning around 1,000,000 miles a minute or whatever it is. And, like, and what it does for me is it helps remind me how insignificant my problems are. And I think a lot of people outside of America, like, we live in we're very fortunate. To be in America, and I know there's a lot of challenges here, but, like, there's a lot of people that do not have the comfort, the safety, the security we do. And all of that helps me remember that my financial problems of my, house that's 4 times the size I really need is, it's really not that big of a deal in the big scheme of things.
All right. Just a short interruption. We'll get back to the show, but it's time for me to bring something to you that I'm very excited about. It's the Keep Pursuing webinar series. Now, you might remember the Keep Pursuing series last fall, the series of 5 talks that I gave at my local coffee shop. This is a different Keep Pursuing series. It's a webinar series, 7 webinars, mainly for financial advisors, but it will be relevant to everybody. If you're not an advisor, you are more than welcome to register. We're not checking what you do. You may just want to swap out some of the financial advisor terms with something that's relevant to you. But the whole premise of the series is to help financial advisors bring more of their authentic self to their practice so that they can grow their business in a way that makes them happier, is better for their clients, which ends up being a win-win all the way around. The first of the webinar series have been announced. It's with my good friend Samantha Russell. It will be on May 22nd at 2 o'clock Eastern on a Zoom webinar. And we're going to be basically talking about how you can grow your business through authenticity, spending time talking about what is authenticity, what do I mean by that, how do you know if you are authentic, how do you know if you're not, and then how can you use that in your marketing and your branding to grow your business. So you can see where this is going. I'm going to cover a little bit of the authenticity part. Samantha obviously has a lot to share as well, and then she's going to do the heavy lifting on how do you bring this to your practice, since she is the marketing guru in the financial advisor world. It's going to be an exciting webinar. I'm really excited about it. All the other ones are going to be great as well. I'll be releasing those dates and guests and the subjects as time goes on. But for right now, May 22nd, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Zoom. The webinar links are all over the place. You can go to justincastelli.io, sign up for the daily notes. They'll be in there. You can find them on social media as well. Eventually, I'll put a landing page, but I'm not there yet. Too many things to do. The access is there, and if you really can't find it anywhere, just shoot me an email, jc@justincastelli.io. I will shoot you the link. But it's all over LinkedIn. It's all over Twitter. It's on the website through the daily notes. But it's a series for financial advisors to bring more of their authentic self so they can be happier, do a better job for their clients, which is a win-win, like I said. All right, let's get back to my conversation with Matt. So I do want to jump back as we kind of go over different places. When you left to start the business, obviously there was an event that kind of led you to your consulting business. And then I want to talk about what you're doing today more so. But,
Yeah.
you said it was the path of least resistance was to set up the consulting company. There's still like some uncertainty and maybe some fear around that. How did you navigate that? Because meanwhile, I remember all that other stuff was going on. So like if you were able to separate out all the other stuff you were going through, which not to minimize it, but just to focus on transition from moving out of corporate world to setting up your own business and everything that comes with that, how did you navigate that part of the transition?
So I mean, I know it's kind of like almost like it doesn't make sense when I say it's the path of least resistance to start a business. I think that for some of us it can be. I think that, I mean, and you would appreciate this, but I have a financial advisor. I've always invested. I've always saved. My parents did teach me to save from a younger age. My dad, I think probably at like 14 years old, he took the money that we had as kids, like that we had gotten from our grandparents, and invested it in Disney stock, so I saw my, $3,000 that I had at 8 years old turn into 15,000, by the time I was 18 years old. So that was always something that was instilled in me. But I mean, I don't think that you should go out and start a business if you don't have a cushion at all. But I had a cushion, and I think navigating through it, like when I think back to like starting the business was fun, and my mind is just being flooded right now. But my accountant was probably my best friend for a while. I called this woman every single day for probably 3 months, and I was like, how do I start an LLC? Or, well, actually I got an S corp, but she was, helped me with all of this stuff. And I think that we underestimate how much help there is out there. But you got to surround yourself. I'm assuming that your audience is people who are financially responsible, that have help. But in our network, you have people that can point you in the right directions, and it's not that difficult. LegalZoom, I think it was like $600 to start a corporation or something back then. Maybe it's even less now. But gone are the days of having to go to the library and sit there and read books for 6 months on how to start a business. But it's asking for help. One of my biggest secrets to life in general, it's like, take care of people. I worked for an entrepreneur in New York. I worked for a few entrepreneurs, but my first job in New York was working for a baby product company. And she really took care of people, and not like, oh, here's free pizza. That's nice too. But it was like Christmas bonuses were like, hey, here's an iPad, I was in sales, and we got like, I think our monthly bonus for hitting our goal might have been like $1,000. Maybe it was even more than that. It was like, whoa, like a month on top of like the commission on top of everything else. So when I started my business, I really relied on other people and I took
Hmm.
care of them. I took people to dinner, I took people to drinks, I sent flowers, I sent gifts to anybody who helped me,
Hmm.
got something for it. And it's funny. I don't do things to get favors back, but I won't do a second favor
Hmm.
very often. Like, my kind of rule is like, if a friend says, "Hey, like my friend's starting a business, will you give them some advice?" I'll talk to them for a half hour, 45 minutes if I
Hmm.
like them. But like, out of the 20 times I've done that in the past 7 years, I maybe have gotten like two
Hmm.
emails, maybe three, and maybe a Starbucks card for $10
Hmm.
or something. Like, but nothing stands out, and it just it's and I didn't do it to get anything, but it's like I wouldn't give another
Hmm.
hour of my time to somebody who couldn't take the time to send me an
Hmm.
email. And it's just funny. If you take care of people, like I was listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast a couple of months ago, and they were talking about this, and it was like, if you want help from somebody, like go on LinkedIn and find like some high executive and offer them $1,000 for an
Hmm.
hour of their time. Like $1,000 is like, even for someone who's wealthy, that's a really nice dinner
Hmm.
out somewhere. Like if you take care of people and you're willing to pay, if you're willing to be of service to them as well, like there's a lot of
Hmm.
help out there.
There's a book called Unreasonable Hospitality. Have you heard of that? I for,
I think he was on a
yeah,
podcast
I forget
recently,
his
I
name. I
believe.
have the book. It's not Danny Meyer, but I think it was his business partner and all like the big, real nice.
11
Yeah, all the
Madison
nice
Park.
restaurants out there. And but that was the point, was that like be unreasonably hospitable to people and take care of them. And they talked about the things they did at the restaurant and like the freedom that the waiters and waitresses had to take care of their customers and like the value of that. So the and I think what you said on that is one thing that's really, really important is that you did it not for anything in return. Like I think that part of
Yeah.
that book, but also just one of my rules has always been like to genuinely do things, not because you expect something in return. Because you may get something in return in the long run, and it may not be the person who didn't send you the email, but karma comes back around and brings you an opportunity that kind of just falls into your lap. That might be kind of the repayment of the good that you did for the person who didn't take advantage of it. But for anybody listening, don't be that person that doesn't send an email or a thank you note. Like if you want to wow somebody, send a handwritten thank you note. And
Yeah.
I used to do that a lot when I was younger. I kind of got away for a little while, but then I've gotten back into it. And like now I have this cool little note card that I use. I have two stamps that stamp on like a logo. So like I stamp each card, like it impresses it. And so it's raised up. Every card I send, like I hand stamp it, I hand write it. And it's amazing the things that people get. Or another low hanging fruit thing would be to record like a thank you Loom video, because I've done that before, or I've done that to ask people to come on my podcast rather than send them an email. Because how many emails do they get? Let me record a 3 minute video showing you how excited I would be to have you on my podcast and what we would talk about. And it hasn't always gained the guest, but at least got a response of like, hey, I really appreciate that. Thanks for sending the video. Like now's not a good time. So that isn't a part of today's conversation, but I'm glad you mentioned that because I think that's important. Just remember to be a good human being of like, let people know you appreciate their time, respect their time. And then those of us that might be on the receiving end, don't be too good to give away some of your time because chances are somewhere along the line, somebody gave you some of their time. So it's kind of pay it forward. Well, let's transition to today. And I'm excited about this because I've been the bad one in this podcast. I've had to push this out a couple of times because of travel and sicknesses. But when we were meeting, we were talking through kind of where our visions were and what we were going, and you kind of had a path you were going. And then last night when you emailed me, you're like, "Hey, agenda looks great, but I'm also comfortable talking about where I am now. Like I've had some clarity lately. So tell me about the clarity, and that might bring in what you were planning on doing versus what you're doing now. But what I uncovered before we hit record was that the clarity you found seems to have been bringing to you something that's more authentic. So everybody, I haven't heard what this is yet, so I get to hear it alongside you. So kind of where are you at today? And if we need to have a little bit of insight to where the past was, give us that explanation as well.
Yeah, thank you. And this is really exciting for me. And not even just to like, it's not a reveal. It's just like, it's the journey that like, and this is me being vulnerable and me figuring out my authentic purpose. All the things that we're talking about right now. And we're in brand builders together. This firm that helps us, put our businesses together and figure out how we're gonna be serving the world. And it's a process, and I've been very patient. I'm writing a book as well. I mean, if you want to learn patience, write a book. I mean, it's funny because I see people around me that are like, "Oh my God, it took me 2 months to figure this out. I've been writing a book for 3 years," and it's going in the right direction. Don't get me wrong. I'm very happy with it, but it's a journey, and it's a lot of one step forward, 2 steps back. So, I've been really trying to figure out like what it is, who I want to help, like what my purpose is in the world, what my mission is, and and I and I spent a lot of time and effort and conversations figuring this out. And one of the things that I was most proud of was what I'd done in my business. I mean, through healing, through learning to honor my needs, through learning to set boundaries, learning my worth. Like I learned, I mean, my business has been wildly successful. I've made $1 million a year, on the past couple of these years, like as a consultant. This is wealth that I never expected to have. And I think when I say the path of least resistance, it's because I'm selling these products for people. I see people buy millions of dollars of tchotchkes to put in a warehouse, and here I am, buying a computer and able to like sell a service for that. So I felt like there was this calling for me to help other entrepreneurs learn their worth, and people that this wasn't for people that had been born with silver spoons in their mouth, or that had a good sense of their own worth. It was for people like me. And this wasn't wrong. Like, I really care about this a lot. Like the inequality situation in the world is probably one of the things that I'm most compassionate and caring towards. Like gone are the days of going to college and just like showing up for a job and being able to buy a house almost anywhere now. You've got to finagle your way to a higher compensation package. So I really thought I was going to help entrepreneurs with that. And I still have a lot of interest in it, but all roads kind of lead back to where you start. And I did this like exercise like 3 or 4 years ago during COVID, like where it was just this like, 30-page questionnaire. And then at the end, I'd always kept this in mind. It was like, if you could teach a TED Talk right now, what would you do that about? And it was helping men with vulnerability, helping them open up about their needs, their feelings. So that's like always been on the back. And I've been trying like any way I possibly could to like avoid this for whatever reason. And so, after all of this, like, going back to the, what did we say? The internal success versus external success. I don't love business that much. I mean, I'm excited to be building my own business. Like, I like that part of it, but I don't want to be like, maybe it might change one day, but I mean, I don't see myself like out there trying to pitch investors for $1 billion investment into my business. And so I'm opening up a program, still finalizing the details, but I want to really help men that are waking up and seeing that there's something that's holding them back. I kind of envision this person like similar to me, that they might have grown up with love. They might have grown up in a nice family, but they grew up with maybe parents that were dealing with their own trauma that never healed it, that maybe they didn't say they loved you enough. Maybe they didn't help you, support you enough. One of the biggest things for me, I didn't know how to ask for help. Like I've been asked, do you have any regrets, or are there any things that you would change about like about your life? And no, except for one thing. I really could have benefited from having more support and more help. I've been on my own to accomplish like all of my hopes and dreams, and it's been really difficult. And I don't think that kids should have to do that on their own. And my story is one where I woke up. I had always made a lot of, like, after not having friends for a while, this was surprising enough as it was. In high school, I made tons of friends, and I have a lot of friends, and not even like number of friends, like really quality friends. So I was spending holidays with other friends' families, and I was just like, every family has their thing, but like, there was just a level of like, just compassion and normalcy and respect, and the child wasn't working so hard to get the parents' affection. And I woke up and I want to help other
Mhm.
men who are in the same situation, that are waking up, that want to be better fathers, that see themselves held back at work, or maybe they want to start a business but they believe they can't do it because somebody told them they couldn't do it growing up and they've never shed those limiting
Mhm.
beliefs. So I like I've spent some time, and this is the reason I'm sharing this so in depth, and I'm really grateful to share this because this is what trauma
Mhm.
does. It makes you spend years and years living a life that's inauthentic to yourself, even being a part of brand builders, even like spending dozens of hours a week like working on this. I still struggled to uncover what was authentically
Mhm.
inside of me. And this entrepreneur thing wasn't wrong. Like there is, I care about that very much, but I think that somebody who's healed, or that somebody who didn't endure the level of trauma that I have, is more in touch with their needs and able to identify things. They were able to pursue their passions. They were kids that were told that art was okay to
Mhm.
pursue,
Mhm.
and for me, I mean, I was all about survival. I had no time to draw. I was mowing the neighbor's lawn to make like an extra few dollars to buy a pair of
Mhm.
shoes. And I never got to really know myself. So it's been really fun to learn this, and I want to help other men do this. But also, kind of like, it's just pressing the brakes. I really see myself called to people who are waking up. I'm not trying to force someone to do something they don't want to do at this point. It's for people that are really
Mhm.
open to like learning. Like, hey, like I see my friend. He seems like he's a happier dad, or I'm coming home and I'm angry. I'm drinking at night too much, and a place where men can be
Mhm.
vulnerable and honest, and we're gonna grow together. I'm all about growing. So, anyways, thank you for letting me share
Oh,
that.
of course, man. This was for, and the cool thing about it is, like, I can see the smile on your face and like the sparkle in your eye when you talk about it, and nowhere yet in this conversation has that energy been at that level. So it's cool to like not only hear it, but like I can see it and sense it, even though you're in California and I'm in Indiana. Um, but I do think that like the timing for you to go down this path, it seems to be perfect. And I don't know if this is because stage of life. So I'm 42, and we hear about like I remember hearing about midlife crises growing up, and I didn't go through the midlife crisis where I bought the sports car or like those types of things. But I do think there is some truth to that number 40, and I even think Carl Jung said something about the age of 40. But it like what I've realized is that you at 40 you've lived enough life to really have like tried different things. You've bounced around, you've been an entrepreneur, you've had different experiences, you've learned. My path has bounced around. Like, so now I know what I like and what I don't like. You get to an age where you begin to realize that like all of the things and the people we once cared about, we thought were watching us aren't, and they don't give a shit. So like all of this stuff I was worried about impressing people doesn't really matter. And it's why like when you get to this age, you just kind of, you don't become selfish, but you just don't care what other people think about you because you know they're not thinking about you. And then you can start to really focus in on who you really are. And so I think that, I'm seeing that, I'm feeling it. So I don't know if it's because of where I am in my circle where I see more people going through this, men and women, but I do think there is kind of like a greater awakening just across mankind. And I've read some like spirituality and like astrology type stuff that like, the moons and the phases we're shifting in, that like this is actually a bigger thing going on. But I do think there are more men realizing that they're unhappy, realizing that there's more that they want to do. They have the outward success, but they don't have the inward, and that they're going to need help getting there. And for some people, there may be a lot of trauma, and for some people, they're not. Like, that's one of the things that I wrestle with is that when I look back over my life, I don't see a lot of trauma. And maybe if I were to go in and do like some real deep shadow work, I would find something that's in there. But like, I grew up in a great household. Parents are still married. Felt loved. I had a sister. We got along. There were little bumps along the road of like like things, family and financial. And my sister had like second degree and third degree burns on her legs when she was in second grade. So there was traumatic events, but nothing to where I look back and I'm like, man, that was really, really hard, and it's been carrying with me. So I think there are some people that have had that trauma. I think there are others who aren't. And like, I have a podcast episode coming up with somebody that we're going to talk about consciousness. And he basically was like, burn down, rise of the phoenix type thing. Like, and so there's a lot of stories you hear out there where somebody's, the hero journey took them to a point where they basically they lost everything so that they could rebuild to be their true self. And I don't want to have to, I don't want to have to experience that if I don't have to. And I'm curious to see, are there stories out there to where you don't have to have that hero journey go all the way down to the bottom for you to build back. So the point of that random thought is, I think there are going to be plenty of men who are ready. And to your point, you can't make them be ready till they're ready, but they are ready. They know they need help. And because you've been there, done that, like Rory Vaden talks about, our best potential customer or client is ourselves 3 years ago. Because you've been there, you've done that, you know what they're going through. You can empathize and you can share your experience to help them figure out their own. And that's some clarity that I've personally had, is that this concept of the authentic life, I want it to be universal, but the people I'm going to probably do most of my one-on-one work going forward, I keep my clients as I have today, but going one-on-one will probably be more financial advisors that are 15 to 20 years into their career. They are losing their passion. They're feeling frustrated because while they've built this great business, it doesn't align with the individual they grew to be at age 40 or so. So let's figure out who they are. And then once we figure out who they are through life planning, let's align their business and make changes to their business so that they have that alignment between, personal life and career life. And that was something, yours is in the last few weeks. That's been a realization I've had over the last few weeks. And it's just a zoning in on it and getting out of the way, because just like you said, it sounds like what you're doing now is obvious in hindsight. And for me, creating a message for everybody and creating ways to help people that maybe don't hire me one-on-one to still make progress, that's part of the plan. But it's obvious that I should be working with other financial advisors, because my largest audience is financial advisors. Like 90% of my LinkedIn connections, financial advisor. Most of my subscribers to my daily notes, financial advisors. So like that's who's coming to me. And surely there are 20 advisors out there that are where I was 2 or 3 years ago that I can help. So anyways, I just share that clarity that I've had with you, because I didn't get a chance to tell you that beforehand. So we're both moving closer and closer.
And thank you for sharing. And I think like it doesn't have to be like trauma always. I think like that there's no reason. How do I want to say this? It's like men are sensitive. I mean, a lot of men are sensitive, and it's just like we care about things, and like I think that just this is a very broad statement, but I think in general, like our generation of men cares about feelings more than our parents' generation, and way more than their parents' generation. So it's not necessarily like something horrific had to happen. I think that we're all waking up to things. I mean, just like even the economy or the world, like the world as it relates to like how we engage with it, like it's just different now. There's a lot more stress. Like we're more aware that like life is short, and I think that we're all waking up to that a bit more, especially men, because we had a lot of waking up to do in general. I think women have been perhaps waking up a little bit before us to being open to sensitivities and emotions. So,
well, as we kind of bring this episode, which will probably be the first of a couple, I definitely want to have you back on when the book gets done, and talk about the book and all of that and promote that as well. But as we bring this one kind of to a close, are there any kind of like closing thoughts or things that you want to go deeper on, or that maybe I didn't ask you?
And the thing you haven't gone over, I just can't stress the importance of like just being open to talk about feelings, and like it's a tall order, and I think that therapy gets a bad rap. I also don't think that therapy is for everybody always. I like to think of therapy as like an entry point. I recently just started back at therapy because I just felt the calling to go back, but I took a year off recently, and I don't think that I missed anything from it. I would say that I work with coach. I have a few different, I have quite a bit going on in the coaching world, but I would say that like the coaching is a lot more helpful for me for like specific objectives, but just talking to somebody, and I've been surprised, like just by reaching out to friends, especially other male friends, there are quite a few more than I would have guessed that are on the same journey as me and looking to just share our feelings, our fears, I think that we all want to be good fathers, good partners, good children to our aging parents and everything. And just keeping it inside of us is really the recipe for a suffering
Well, where can everybody find you? I'll link to below. And Rook, have you recently updated your website? I was on it last night, and I don't remember if it looked like that earlier. Is that a new updated website, or is that how it was not too long ago?
It's
Okay,
how it
it
was.
looked good. It
So
looked good. I just
it's pretty
noticed more of it. So, where can everybody find you?
mattgerlach.com. I publish a weekly blog that comes out on Thursdays, and my offering is there. So, I mean, please feel free to book a call if you have any questions. Honestly, I'm not even concerned if you don't want to be a client or anything. I do offer one-on-one coaching, and there'll be more coming out about a mastermind group I want to start soon, helping men like I talked about. But just reach out. I mean, I'm happy to have a call and just learn from you as well. I'd love to hear what people are thinking, what you're struggling with, what you're succeeding in as well. So all of it. And then on Instagram, my Instagram handle is I am Matt Gerlach. I'm very active and would love to hear from you there. But I'm all about conversations right now and just want to hear from people.
Sounds good.
So
Well, all
thank you.
those will be in the show notes on the blog post and also on YouTube. So that'll make it easy for them to find you. My final question, and this is one I steal from another podcast, All the Smoke. Thinking of trying to grow the podcast and getting more interesting people in outside of my own personal network. If there was anybody that you could see on the show in the future, who would you like that to be? With the caveat being you have to be able to help get them on the show. So that keeps you from saying like some super famous person that can never get here, somebody that you would like to see on the show that you might be able to help get on.
In full transparency, about 30 minutes into this, I realized that I should have thought about this a little bit further, and I'm sweating a little bit right now. I would say my
Okay.
friend Kevin. I think that you would get along with him well. He has a business, he's a realtor, and I can make the introduction, but I think you two would get
Cool.
along really good. He's going to be a father soon.
Nice,
So,
nice. I've been there and done that a few times, so could give him a little bit of advice on the way. Awesome. Well, Matt, I want to thank you for your time and again for your vulnerability, which is, that's your brand. So you're right on brand, and that was perfect. Make sure everybody, go check out Matt's stuff and find the links. And just want to thank you again. And looking forward to following your journey, getting updates along the way, and then, like I said, obviously having you on when the book comes out to promote the book.